week's lab is going to expound on last week's lab, right? We still have two receptacles, we still have two lights. This time, instead of only having a single switch to control our lights, we have one switch which is going to control half of our receptacle here, right? It's going to be a split receptacle. This switch will control it, and then a pair of three-way switches which are going to control our lights, right? So our difference here, right? We still have we're going to have our home run come into our first receptacle. We're going to have power come to our second receptacle, right? But now we're not going to tie into both halves of this receptacle the way that we have previously, right? We've got to come up to this switch with a piece of 14-3, right? Hope you guys can see that, right? We need three wires. We're going to need our hot and our neutral to come up to the switch, and then we're going to need a switch leg to come back down to the receptacle, okay? And then inside of this box, we will now have a hot and a neutral that we can use to feed the rest of our circuit. And so we'll have a piece of 14-3 that goes from this three-way switch to this three-way switch. I'm going to show you in just a minute how that is wired together, for those of you that haven't had wiring methods or don't remember from your wiring methods class. And then we'll come up to our first light and then over to our second light, right? Now, when I draw this, and I just draw a line going straight from this light to this light, right? Each of these, when we've actually put the wire in, right, the wire has to come in where you can add a staple and go across, add a staple, right? Each of these boxes has to have a staple. That was something we had some issues with last week. We want to make sure that we address that this week. So for our three-way switches that we have, and then our receptacle, right? So let's draw what we've got here, right? So we've got our first receptacle. We have our second receptacle that is our split receptacle. And then we have our single switch for our split receptacle. We have our three-way switch. Now internally, the way that this looks, right, we're going to have our hot wire coming in, right, and then it has, right, when you flip the switch, it's going to swap. This switch is going to swap from one pole to the other, right? So we're going to have a screw on each side, right, that is going to be fed. So we're going to have our power coming in, and then we'll have two power wires coming out, and then depending on the direction of the switch will depend on which one it goes to. Then it's going to come over to the second three-way switch, and for our travelers, so our travelers between them, we're gonna come in on it, right? Have the same situation there. And then we're going to go, we'll put our lights over here just so that they're out of our way. So the way that this is going to work, we've got our power coming in. It's going to feed down to our receptacle. We've got a neutral. We're going to do our neutral in blue. You know, our neutral's white, but the white's not going to show up on our whiteboard here, so we're going to have our neutral's going to come in. It's going to tie into our receptacle, right? Then though both of those are going to continue over to our second box, right? But here we have the situation where we have two screws on this receptacle, right? For our neutral side and our hot side. These are tied together. It's the same situation here, right? These are tied together. So when we talk about this neutral wire ties in here, and this hot wire ties in here, it powers both sides of that receptacle. Both sides of the receptacle are powered because these two screws are tied together. We're going to break the one right here. We're going to break the screw in between the two halves of this receptacle. Right? So now then, our always powered is going to get powered, and our neutral side is going to hit that screw, and that side we can leave together. So our neutral side, both sides of our neutral tied together, but now there's no path for electricity to the top half of this receptacle. In order to power the top half of this receptacle, we're going to need to get some power, but we want for that to be controlled by this switch, right? So we're gonna tie in right here, and we're gonna tie in right here, and we're gonna come up to this switch, and with our neutral, we're going to come up into this switch box, and it's going to, we're going to leave it free for the moment, okay? Now, we still have to get power to this top half of this receptacle, right? And we've got a single wire coming up here, but if we use a 14-3, if we use if we use a cable that has 3 power wires in it, right, then we can have another leg that will come back. It's going to be coming back, and that will get tied into that top screw, right? So our power, it comes up on the black, and then it comes back on the red to power the top half of that receptacle, right? Do you understand how that works? Now inside of our box here, inside of our double box for these two switches, right? Our hot and our neutral came in. Well, before we tie our hot to that switch, we're going to pigtail it, right? So that it powers the leg of our 3-way switch, right? And so just like we had 3 travelers here, right? We're going to have 3 travelers in between these 2 boxes, right? We'll have our neutral, our white wire, we'll have a black wire that's hot, and we'll have a red wire that's hot. Now the black wire and the red wire are not always going to be hot. It's going to depend on which way this switch is flipped, right? So first we'll tie our neutrals together, right? We're going to put a wire nut on that. We're going to tie our neutral to our neutral, and it's going to come into this box, and it's just going to sit over to the side for right now. We're not going to do anything with it right at this moment. But now we need to get power to this other switch. So we have one leg is the black wire, right? And then it's going to come over and tie into our other switch, right? So if this switch is in this position, we have power coming in. If this switch is in this position, it's gonna continue power over to this switch. Now this switch, it's on the other screw right now, right? When the switch is flipped, it's on the other screw right now. And so it's not passing any power through to whatever we have past it. Let's tie our red to the other screw of that 3-way switch. And the same situation here, right? Now, this switch is tied to the red, but if we look back over here, this switch is not currently on the red side. So right now, there's no power on this portion of that, on the hot screw of this second switch, right? But if we flip this switch, now our power comes along the red wire through the switch and powers the hot screw of our second 3-way switch. And we're going to take that power and run it to the lights, right? If we flipped this side, right, we leave this side the same, right? We're tied to the black side. The switch is tied to the black side right now. If we flip the switch and this switch made up to the black side, that would power the light. So either, it's set up so that either switch you flip, if you've ever been in a room that has a light switch on either side of the room, either switch you flip will turn the light on, or if the light's on, either switch will turn the light off. Right, so coming out of this box, right, we no longer, now we just have one hot, right? We just have one hot coming out of that three-way switch. And and so to power our light, we need one hot, we need one neutral, right? So we are gonna come across, right? Come up to our light, which will pigtail, so that it can then come across to our second light. Same thing with the neutral. We gotta have a neutral. So we're gonna come across with our neutral. Our light's gonna pigtail down to it. That's gonna be what we've got set up. Right? So if you guys watch the next video, I'm gonna show you guys how we actually wire up the three-way switch. There'll also have a video for how we would wire up our receptacle with this half on and half off, our split receptacle. I'll do a separate video for each of those. We're going to do both of those things in today's lesson, right? So we're building upon what we did last week, and it's getting a little bit more complicated. It's going to get a little more complicated every week. So I encourage you to watch these videos before you come to class, so that you have the time that you need on your lab to spend on the hands-on lab, and not spend it watching the videos during class time.